Today we will present to you a concrete approach to building localized cooperative development through our intervention in Kwazakele, Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality, the Transition Township project. You will find in our presentation that we organize our cooperative production around the concepts of food sovereignty and energy democracy, which we identify as crucial to putting the power of social and economic reproduction in the hands of everyday people. As a strategy toward building an ecological politics from the ground up, democratic ownership and control of food and energy by the community sustains the people's ability to reproduce themselves over the long term. In this light, we assert the Transition Township project as an example of circular economy in practice. Our presentation is an engagement with you all about how we see ourselves within the current crisis of capitalism, the ongoing ecological catastrophe of the sixth great mass extinction on Earth, and where we can exploit this crisis through the dimensions of capital. We will present to you our methodology of participatory action research to describe our approach to implementing this project, and we will give you an assessment of the Transition Township project by analyzing it through David Harvey's 7 activity spheres of capital to present how such an analysis offers a framework for how such a project like Transition Township might be possible in one or many political economic contexts. So there is an effort within development to shift away from top-down approaches through the application of participatory practices. It is true that since 1950, $2.3 trillion in development aid has been spent in poor countries, while these same countries remain in a state of dependence proximate to their wealthy benefactors. Participation emphasizes a shift toward building a sense of self-reliance within communities that enables independence. The idea is for the poor to share the benefits of development where they previously have not. However, it is also true that participatory development is sometimes conducted nominally in service of communities without any substantive commitment to the community's input. Participation is sufficiently ambiguous to connote a degree of collaboration that ranges from community ownership down to an informational meeting with members of the community. The lack of consensus around participation proves challenging for those who wish to transform development practice, in addition to communities, through bottom-up approaches to participation. In the 1960s, Sherry Arnstein categorized degrees of citizen participation to the extent that they embody a definition of participation as citizen power. Her ladder of participation highlights the fundamental point that participation without redistribution of power is an empty and frustrating process for the powerless. In this schema, power holders proffer forms of participation that serve to either simply inform or placate the community at the bottom of the ladder. The categorization rises in the hierarchy as citizens take more control and ownership of the development process until it is entirely determined by the community. The Transition Township project seeks to engage the people of Kwazakele with the highest levels of citizen power. I'll hand off to Professor Janet Cherry, who will introduce the Transition Township project.
Thank you, Tony. Now, because this panel is on transforming economies in the context of environmental crisis, we want to explore this transformation of economies through looking at the concept of transition. And the Transition Township refers to two senses of the word: the transition from fossil fuel, from a highly centralized economy to a sustainable and localized economy, and also a transition from the most unequal economy in the world, which is South Africa, to a more just and egalitarian economy. So the objective in this project is to change or transform the structure of the economy, and the methodology to achieve this is participatory action research. So the Transition Township project was conceived as an action research project to explore such an alternative economic system at local level. And in doing so, the Development Studies Department, the researchers and students partnered with activists from a working class township, which is called Kwazakele, to establish neighborhood production cooperatives. So the context is an urban working class community, which you can see in this slide. It has a high level of poverty and unemployment, There are around 100,000 people in this community living in a densely populated but formal township, which has housing, water, sanitation, and electricity infrastructure, and an industrial area, unused factories, and an unused power station. The methodology of participatory action research involves a change in power relations, as Tony was referring to citizen power. And in this context, the residents, who are the citizens, are involved as researchers, as decision makers, and ultimately as owners of the productive resources in their community. So the technology of renewable energy thus enables the localized production for local markets, and also enables a change in social relations of production. So Patrick will explain how this is done.
Thanks, Janet. So the slide you're looking at now shows the model that we are using as the kind of basic way of understanding what we're doing here. And it's a neighborhood production model. And the idea is that production occurs in the neighborhood itself, and that as far as possible, local people in that people take control over whatever production they can in their neighborhoods. And so we've looked at the idea of mobilizing resources into some kind of exchange that can then supply the neighborhood cooperatives, who then produce commodities for local markets. And I'll just focus on the energy as the example, but we're also looking at things at food, waste recycling, and others. So we conducted a pilot project, and what we proved is that if you take 1,000 square meters, you invest R1 million, and you put up a renewable energy installation, that installation is going to produce around about 150,000 kilowatt hours per annum, which is worth around about 280,000 Rand. The next slide just shows the actual production of the pilot installation for a day, and you can see things like we can track carbon emissions, the carbon emissions saved by using things like solar PV. When you do this kind of thing at scale, the numbers start to add up. So if each household in the township had a 4 kilowatt installation, which is not that big as the size of a carport, the township, KwaZulu township as a whole, would produce around about 150 gigawatts per annum, and that translates into around about 285 million Rand. And just to give you an idea of what the impact that would be on the local economy, the current income of the population living in KwaZulu is around about 700 million Rand. So the idea here is to grow the amount of money that's going into the township, and also to circulate it within the local economy. And this would occur through means of both the core installations, but also food production installations, and the transformation of brownfield sites, such as the adjacent, what used to be a coal-fired power station. So if we break this down a little bit further, the idea here is that we take money at the beginning of the day. We purchase means of production. In this case, it's solar panels, a carport, and we're using some land that's available, municipal land. We produce a commodity, and we turn that into, we provide that to the local market, and turn the commodity back into money. And that money then gets circulated within further elements of production. So we start off with energy production, but we move into things like food production and waste management. And in order to sort of analyze, to understand how this can occur, we're looking at it through the lens of the 7 interrelated activity spheres that capital actually operates in. This is from David Harvey, and I'll start off with mental models of the world. And basically what we're dealing with here in Nelson Mandela Bay is that the existing sort of mode of governance and development is a kind of neoliberalism. It has got social democratic features, things like basic income grants and free basic electricity and water. But essentially, this model of urban development is pretty focused on property development, and so it promotes things like office parks, shopping malls, inner city gentrification, special economic zones, property taxes, commodification of public services, privatization of public open space, privatization of services, and the like. And the debate between the political parties in the city is essentially on how best to manage this model without being corrupt. It's predicated on the idea of foreign direct investment, which is the production ends up being for global markets. There's contestation around who owns what, but not the actual model itself. And the system gets gamed by local and national and even international criminal networks who use it to extract and launder money. And in addition to all of that, we're in a technocratic environment from national government where a paradigm of austerity and scarcity is reinforced. So what we are proposing in contradistinction to that is a socialist model of urban development that's kind of has its roots in the Paris Commune and other experiments. The cooperative tradition of Mondragon, Evergreen Cooperative and Corporation Jackson and other examples. The traditions of South Africa's mass democratic movement against apartheid, which was all about democratic organizations at local level with street committees building people's power from the ground up. And what we're saying is that we want to take that and put the production systems in the hands of those kind of structures that are like that, democratic structures that are inclusive rather than exclusive, and that we ultimately aim to solve the problems that are caused by the current global crisis. So problems in climate, the economy, political agency, distribution of resources, and the like. And what's kind of happening is that the technologies and organizational forms that are available to us allow us to actually start to look at solving some of these kind of problems. So, things like artificial intelligence, the fourth industrial revolution, the Internet of Things, the possibility of decentralized and localized productions, especially in industries that were once actually monopolies or natural monopolies, let's say. So things like energy and food. The rise of the network society and new forms of network production kind of ecosystems. And one of the things that we're saying is that there's lots of talk about things like the network economy and the smart city, but that South Africa and Nelson Mandela Bay in particular has yet to make the kind of the jump from its old systems to use these new possibilities in ways that are that they can be used.